Hey, welcome. So today we're going to get into a story you might not see coming. It's about the rise, the fall, and the pretty dramatic reinvention of management accounting. Now, I know what you're thinking, accounting, but trust me, this is not just about numbers. It's a really fascinating story about strategy, about navigation, and about how even the biggest companies can sometimes lose their way. Let's dive in.
So picture this. You're trying to drive a car, but you're only allowed to look in the rearview mirror. It sounds absolutely insane, right? You'd crash in seconds. And yet, for a really long time, this is pretty much exactly what a lot of businesses were doing. And that question right there, it gets to the absolute heart of the problem we're talking about today. This dangerous habit of using old, outdated information to try and make critical decisions about the future.
To really get what went wrong, you have to understand that there are basically two different worlds of accounting. On one side, you've got financial accounting. Think of this as the history report. It's all backward-looking, focused on telling people on the outside, like investors and regulators, what already happened. But then you've got management accounting. This is supposed to be the company's internal GPS, right? It's meant to be focused on the future, helping managers inside the company make smart decisions and take action. This is our main character in this story. So, in a perfect world, what was this internal GPS supposed to do? What was its original promise to the business world in the first place?
Well, at its core, the mission was incredibly ambitious. As you can see, this was never supposed to be just about counting beans. It was meant to be the roadmap for actually implementing a company's strategy. It was a tool for influencing how people behave and a powerful lens to make sure every single resource was being used as efficiently as possible. I mean, it was designed to be the ultimate tool for any manager.
But somewhere along the way, that dream kind of fell apart. By the end of the 20th century, a lot of experts were starting to agree that this vital tool was just fundamentally broken. This was the moment of crisis, the Relevance Lost era.
And this quote? This is the bombshell. In 1987, two academics, Johnson and Kaplan, published their huge book, Relevance Lost. And this one sentence sent absolute shockwaves through the business world. They basically came out and said that the system was providing information that was too late, too jumbled together, and too distorted to be of any real use to anyone. Ouch.
So why did it all go so wrong? Well, Johnson and Kaplan pointed to these three core failures. First was short-termism, that obsession with hitting the quarterly numbers, which made companies blind to their own long-term strategy. Second was a total failure of control. The information managers were getting was so broad and came so late that it was useless for running day-to-day operations. And finally, they called out a failure in academic accounting itself, with researchers basically stuck in an ivory tower, totally disconnected from the real problems managers were trying to solve.
But here's the thing about a crisis. It often sparks innovation. The moment everyone declared that management accounting was irrelevant, it forced a complete rethink. It was time to move beyond the old ways of just budgeting and counting beans.
One of the first key innovations was something called activity-based costing, or ABC. Now, instead of just smearing costs across big departments like you would with peanut butter, ABC acts more like a detective. It meticulously traces costs to the actual activities that are causing them. For the very first time, managers could clearly see which products or which customers were truly making the money and which ones were secretly draining all their resources. It was a total game changer in terms of clarity.
All right, the next major target for a makeover was that old cornerstone of corporate planning, the traditional annual budget. People started seeing it for what it was, a relic from a totally different era.
And this slide just perfectly lays out why. The whole budgeting process was this slow, super expensive ritual that actually encouraged managers to play games and hoard resources. It would lock the entire company into a plan that was already a year old, it totally stifled creativity from people on the front lines, and it kept everyone looking backward instead of grabbing the opportunities right in front of them.
So what's the alternative? Well, it's this really cool, radical new philosophy called Beyond Budgeting. It's all about creating businesses that are way more adaptive and decentralized. We're talking rolling forecasts that are constantly being updated, judging performance against your competitors instead of some fixed internal number, and actually empowering teams to make their own decisions. It's a model used by companies like the Swedish bank Svenska Handelsbanken, which famously got rid of its traditional budgets decades ago and never looked back.
And all of this, these new tools and processes, it all started pointing to a much deeper truth. The most powerful levers you have for control and performance, they're not on a spreadsheet. They're in understanding and influencing how people behave.
This timeline really shows you how much the thinking has evolved over the years.
We went from these simple, clunky mechanisms back in the 70s to Robert Simons's much more sophisticated levers of control in the 90s. And finally, we've landed on the modern view, seeing control as a complete package, where things like culture, values, and strategy are every bit as important as the numbers themselves. And this slide right here just perfectly captures that shift in mindset. We've moved from a world of top-down power and just controlling employees to one that's focused on empowering and motivating individuals. The goal isn't to direct people anymore. It's to enable them to take action. It's about focusing on their behavior and what drives them, not just the raw numbers.
So, after this whole journey from relevance lost to relevance found, where are we headed next? Because this story is definitely not over. There are new technologies on the horizon that are poised to completely reshape the whole landscape all over again.
First up, the Internet of Things, or IoT. Think about it. With sensors on literally everything, from factory floors to delivery trucks, managers now have this constant real-time stream of data about their operations. This solves that old too-late problem in a massive way. It offers a level of visibility that was basically science fiction just a decade ago.
And then, of course, you have generative AI. This kind of tech can sift through that mountain of new data, find patterns that a human brain would completely miss, and automate a ton of the forecasting and planning tasks that used to take teams of people months to do. This really tackles those too aggregated and distorted problems by giving us much clearer, more detailed insights.
And looking even farther out on the horizon, we've got quantum computing. This stuff promises to solve incredibly complex problems, like, say, optimizing a massive global supply chain almost instantaneously. This could completely wipe out all the guesswork and trade-offs that managers have had to deal with forever. The implications are just staggering.
Which brings us to our final big question. We started this whole story with information that was too late, too broad, and too distorted. And now, we're standing on the verge of a world with perfect real-time information at our fingertips. So, have we finally solved the relevance problem for good? Or, in our endless quest for perfect control, have we just created an entirely new set of problems that we can't even see yet? That's the question I want to leave you with. Thanks for tuning in.